All right, it's time to talk to Brownie Insurance Agency. I'm gonna let you guys give a spiel, and then I'm gonna tell you something I ran into. So
okay, that's cool.
Hopefully it wasn't a poll.
Yeah. Well,
their insurance will cover it.
yes,
yeah,
it will cover.
it will cover it, but we would be sad if you really did run into.
No, it wasn't a physical run into somebody.
Okay, good.
It was a walking by and hearing something somebody said.
So what you're saying is a metaphor.
Okay. If he didn't read Charlotte's Web, he probably doesn't know what a metaphor is.
Oh, that's
okay,
true.
It's about a pig and a spider. I know that.
Okay, so we've had this question come up a lot recently, and so that's what we thought we would talk about today. And it's a simple question. We're talking about on a personal auto policy, who is allowed to drive
Who's
and be
insured?
covered? Yeah, who's allowed to drive my car and be covered? That's the question that we've been asked.
I remember when I was very first starting out, this question stumped me when this one client was very adamant about having his wife's name on an auto ID card. I had no idea why he was so insistent on this. I was like, explain to him, I was like, buddy, your wife is covered. She's a named driver on the policy. You're good to go. But he was adamant. What I found out was that day, there are policies out there called named driver only policies that only the driver on that policy is covered.
And those are bad policies.
Bad.
We don't like those. So now I'm talking in very general terms, okay? Because there are some weird, bad, cheap, whatever you want to call it, policies.
You get what you pay for.
But typically, your insurance company wants you to let them know about any licensed driver in your household, okay? And let them list them and rate, check their driving record, whatever, and rate for them. Now, there are some exceptions. Say you have your adult child that lives with you and they have their own insurance, their own vehicle, then you may not need to list them as a driver. And then, again, those standard policies, if you give another person permission to drive your car, they're covered.
That's under the permissive use clause in the policy.
So, for example, if I, had to run somewhere and my car's in the shop, or Rick had to run somewhere, and you threw him your keys, yeah,
Well,
he's covered. He doesn't live with you. He doesn't have to be listed as a driver. He doesn't drive it regularly. You just are letting him drive it right now. So, yeah, there would be coverage.
Well, the other day I borrowed your car.
You borrowed my car.
And I drove it all around town.
And washed it and put gas in it, too.
Oh, and he did put a scratch on it.
No, he didn't. He washed it.
You wouldn't be able to tell.
No, you wouldn't, but he washed it and put gas in it too. But so permissive use, typically, yes, if you give somebody permission to drive, then they're covered. Now, we have seen a couple of companies lately, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get sued, a couple of companies that have taken a really hard stance on a regular driver. So say there's an accident and somebody that's not listed as a driver was driving, and in the investigation they found out that they drove regularly and you didn't list them, then they might say there's a exclusion that in an auto policy where if you lie to the insurance company, basically, you could not have coverage, and they're taking the stance of that's a really tough stance. We would argue it as an agency, but if you have somebody that's going to drive regularly, the smartest thing to do is let your insurance company know.
The way I always looked at it, if they can go up and have access to the keys to the vehicle without asking, they need to be on the policy.
And that way you just don't have a question. But typically the rule is if you give somebody permission to drive your car, they're covered to drive your car. But like we said, if you have and the sad thing and the scary thing is the ones we've looked at, the people didn't even know they had a named driver policy. They just come in wanting us to help them look at their insurance, and we're like, okay, this is cheap, but the reason it's cheap is because this and another scary, which is not our subject today, there's actually named state policies, which is even scarier. Like, we'll only cover you in Texas, and you decide you're going to run up to Oklahoma, nope, no coverage. We would never write a policy like that. So
we had companies approach us.
We did.
That's how we found out about it. I was like, what?
So, now, if you don't give somebody permission, that's a different subject because that means they stole it. That's a whole nother radio show I guess we could talk about. But so if you have a question, the smartest thing to do is ask your agent, probably in writing, to get them to tell you the answer. If you're not sure, or but as a rule, if you give somebody permission to drive, they're covered.
That's correct.
Okay, I overheard a conversation. And we don't have a whole lot of time, but I'll give you guys a chance to take a shot at this. I was at a location here in Graham. There was a lady got out of a car, And the person that was with her noticed that inspection sticker has been out since about July. And she said, you need to get that fixed. She goes, I can't. She says, why? She said, well, it's cheaper to pay tickets than it is to pay for insurance.
That just makes me want to throw up. Okay.
And so you got to have insurance to get your license tag. You know, you got to show proof of insurance. I cannot imagine that it would be cheaper. Matt's got his hand up because I think that.
Yeah, because if you get more than one ticket for no insurance, your car will be towed.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just a police thing.
Exactly. Plus, the thing is, if you hit somebody or whatever, you know, you could be sued for ever.
Well, yeah, you have to have insurance to get your car tagged, but you also have, legally, you have to have insurance to drive.
Right.
And so that just makes me really sick to think about. And it's not the
But how many
tickets.
other people are out there in that same position going, I'll take the chance of getting a ticket other than having to pay
Well,
insurance?
But can't you, Matt, can't you eventually lose your license
Yes.
for driving with no
Yeah.
insurance?
Well, everybody, this is a prime example of why uninsured motorists
Yes.
is very, very important.
Do you
I was gonna say that
do you
too.
responsible people, which is the majority of
No.
this station's
Right.
listeners, I fully believe that
Yeah, you gotta drive on the road like, well, that car does not have insurance, so,
Mhm.
you know, at least I have uninsured, so if they bang into me, there we
or
go.
and hurt you, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So yeah, there's so many more repercussions, and I know I'm an insurance agent, and people think, oh well, that's just how she is, but I'm also a driver on the road, and so
Well,
is
that's
my
my deal.
family.
If you
and
hit me,
yeah,
if you hit my truck and then it's your fault, man, I can't imagine what you.
and I know insurance is expensive, and we don't really do this, or we try not to do this. But if you want to go online and buy minimum limit liability and nothing else, it's probably not going to be that expensive. You're not buying much, but at least
Yeah.
you're legal.
I mean, there's a lot of cheap companies out there
Yeah.
that's willing to just sell an auto ID card.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, I don't
That's
even.
basically what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the state minimums are what? I don't even remember
It's
anymore.
30,
But the state does
60,
make them at least do it.
25.
Yeah, so it's 30,000. The state requires you to carry 30,000 bodily injury and 25,000 property damage, which is not a lot, but
Well, Louisiana is 15, 30, 15,
Yeah.
which is scary as
Yeah.
it can be.
so yeah. So that person go on that you overheard.
They drive a
Yeah.
blue four-door car, so I'm sure the police already probably
Right.
know all
But
about
go
it.
online and Google cheap auto insurance
Yeah.
or AAA or something. I'm just making up names. And buy a minimum limits policy so you're legal and you don't lose your license or get your car
Right.
towed or whatever else. It's better than nothing.
I was just thinking of my very first major accident, and they got sued, and we lost for $160,000.
You were
Well-
in the accident?
Yeah, a lady hit me.
Okay.
Well, it's like the guy that pulled out in front of me. I mean, you know, if he hadn't had insurance, man,
He did have insurance. We had
No,
to-
and if you
yeah.
don't have insurance and you hit, and the worst happens, there's a death, then what's gonna happen then?
Yeah.
Well,
You're-
a judgment against you will last forever. So any
Absolutely.
money that you make,
Right.
Yeah,
it's.
build
I
right
mean,
back
it just is an unnecessary thing to happen.
Exactly.
And you know, if you're not responsible enough to buy minimum limit liability, then
Don't
you're not
drive.
responsible to drive. Yeah,
Amen.
Uber, whatever you want to call it, get a walk,
So hopefully the person that made that
Bicycle.
statement
bicycle. Yeah,
is listening. So.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Absolutely.
Okay, how do folks get a hold of you guys?
You can come see us on the second floor of Sierra Bank Building, or call us at 940-549-2525.
if you happen to be over in Parker County, we're in Hudson Oaks at 2950 Fort Worth Highway, Suite 500, 817-770-0096.
And when you get bored of Googling all those cheap insurance policies, you can come see us at brianins.com. That's Brian with a Y.
So get her done, the insurance agency, Ryan Insurance Agency. All right, we got a great sponsor come back. We got your Wednesday helpline today.